This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello there and welcome to Global Business Africa. We'll be giving you insight into Africa's business and financial markets. I'm Uche Okoronkwo, coming to you from Kenya's capital, Nairobi. Let's start with a look at the markets. Now, world shares held just under record highs while European indices edged lower today. Investors were focused on earnings and, of course, the U.S. Fed meeting, which ends on Wednesday. In emerging markets, a 1% slide in Chinese shares curbed gains of the MSCI's EM index. Most other bourses in emerging markets gained, helping MSCI's index of emerging market shares rise 0.1% on the day. That's after 5 days of losses. Now, stocks in Turkey, South Africa, and Russia rose between 0.3% and 0.5%. In South Africa, resources were a drag on the all-share performance. The index did fall slightly over 1% on the day. Now, also coming up on today's show. More than 100 world leaders at the COP26 summit pledged to halt and reverse deforestation. We continue with our focus on how the continent is dealing with its energy crisis. And we meet a group of women helping young girls in Kampala's informal settlements to develop skills to beat their unfortunate situations. Well, let's start off today's show with the COP26. More than 100 world leaders have pledged to halt and reverse deforestation and land degradation by the end of the decade. They've pledged about $19 billion in public and private funds to invest in protecting and restoring forests. Now, the Glasgow Leaders' Declaration on Forest and Land Use is expected to cover forests totaling more than 33 million square kilometers. The promise, made in a joint statement issued at COP26, has been backed by the leaders of countries including Brazil, Indonesia, and the Democratic Republic of Congo, which collectively account for about 85% of the world's forests.
This plan is the first of its kind, taking a whole of government approach and working in our case with Congress to deploy up to $9 billion in U.S. funding through 2030 to conserve and restore our forests and mobilize billions more from our partners.
More leaders than ever before have now signed up to protect our forests, from countries in the north and the south with temperate forests, tropical forests, and including nations like China, Russia, Brazil, some of the largest forest estates in the world. And let's work together, not just to protect the forests, but also to ensure that the forests return.
Now, several African heads of states have called on leaders of wealthier nations to take into consideration the special needs and circumstances of Africa in the fight against climate change. Here is a sample of their comments.
We're naturally very disappointed by the failure of the wealthy nations to honor their commitments of making available $100 billion annually to the poorer countries to assist us in the fight against climate change, and by the unavailability of the technology transfer that will help us find sustainable ways of charting a path out of this existential crisis. Those same nations are, however, insisting that we abandon the opportunity for rapid development of our economies.
What we all ought to remember is when the drastic climate changes hit, it will choose no location, might or weak, poor or rich country. And so we call upon an urgent unlocking of a climate financing that will trigger planned targets and implementation of the NDC. The time to act is now.
We suffer the effects and consequences of industrialization and climate change. We are already gasping for survival. When I hear the expression rise in sea level, I am scared because it brings home the awareness that my country's granitic islands will lose all the economic activities happening around the coast. And I also realize that the beautiful archipelago of 115 islands that we are today may be reduced to less than 50 as our coral islands disappear.
We expect that detailed rules and procedures for implementing the Paris Agreement will be finalized, and a clear way forward for climate-resilient pathways set. We also expect that the agreement will be sufficiently inclusive to accommodate the needs and priorities of developing countries, and in particular, the special needs and circumstances of Africa.
Well, on that note, let's now take apart the day of negotiations with our correspondent, John Bever. He's joining us live now in Glasgow. Great to have you with us on the show today, John. Now, certainly there's been a lot of skepticism around the progress we'll see in terms of clear commitments to key issues at the COP26 this year. What have today's negotiations revealed in terms of action on some of the most crucial issues?
Well, what a lot of the world leaders here and many of the high-level diplomats and negotiators are also here is they are very much selling their big win as the end of deforestation. Some critics arguing that we've seen this all before, but they say crucially this time round we have the really big important countries signed up as well. Those are people such as Brazil and also Russia as well, and it's been signed by most of the world, so China and India and Canada and the United States, everyone on board with that. These are the headlines that they are very keen to see. World leaders pledge to end deforestation is what the papers say, and the world leaders will be very pleased about headlines like that. We have been hearing some press conferences that have been taking place before the leaders leave later this evening. Prime Minister of the UK, Boris Johnson, said he was cautiously optimistic. He admitted that it is a very difficult target, but now the real hard work begins. The world leaders and the headlines, well, they all go home, and now we have people locked in rooms trying to come up with firm ideas to tackle this climate crisis that we're being warned about.
Well, like you said, John, we have seen this all before, many huge announcements. And of course, we know many of those previous plans from the last event haven't achieved their goals. We also saw little progress at the G20 meeting in terms of clear commitments. How then is this all setting the tone at this year's negotiations?
Well, absolutely, you're right, and you are right to have a cautious air because we have heard big promises before and they've failed. When it comes to deforestation in 2014, there was a pledge to halve tropical deforestation by 2020 and to get rid of it by 2030, and that failed. So what's different this time round? Well, this time, a phrase that Boris Johnson has repeated a few times, we are 1 minute to midnight on the doomsday clock when it comes to climate change. So it seems that sense of urgency is why people are more optimistic this time round. But yes, I think the G20 didn't set a particularly good vibe coming into COP26 because it was widely criticised for not having enough firm details, and the pledge to try and limit global temperature rises to 1.5 degrees seems about as ambitious as anyone can get, and plenty of climate experts are saying that's not enough, and this summit here really is the last chance to implement meaningful change.
Well, we do have to leave it there, but many thanks, John, for those great insights. That, of course, is our correspondent, John Bever, joining us there in Glasgow. Well, let's head to Egypt now, where President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi is one of the African leaders who is attending COP26 in Glasgow. While making his address on Monday, he said the North African nation is ready to host next year's COP27. Here's CGTN's Yasser Hakim with more.
Egypt is one of many countries facing huge threats caused by climate change and global warming. Desertification is one danger, but there are others as well.
The projected impacts on Egypt, for instance, is the possibility that part of the delta, large parts of the delta, will be submerged, as well as coastal areas. Certain coastal areas will be also affected due to climate change and due to sea level rise as a result of excessive CO2 emissions.
The effects could be hazardous, displacing millions of people, destroying arable land, and billions of dollars worth of investments and infrastructure. At the COP26 in Glasgow, Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi highlighted the North African country's 2050 strategy to deal with climate change.
Egypt has taken serious steps to apply a sustainable development program, whereby climate change and adaptability is in its core. The aim is for green projects funded by the government to reach 50% by 2025 and 100% by 2030. For example, renewable energy sources represent 20% of our total energy, and we are working for it to reach 42% by 2035.
The country is shifting to clean transportation and building more sustainable cities. Cairo has also been the first in the region to issue green bonds to fund its environmental projects. Egypt is planning to host the next COP27 summit at the Red Sea resort city of Sharm el-Sheikh. For some, hosting COP27 in Egypt next year could be an opportunity to address the region's climate concerns.
First of all, we need the right kind of technologies, environmentally sound technologies and clean technologies. We need, as emerging and developing countries, we need technical support in terms of capacity development and in terms of let's say, good practices that we can emulate and adapt or adopt really, or in a way that suits the socioeconomic circumstances of our countries. And I think Egypt can take a lead role.
Experts here believe conventions like the COP should be the platform for international community to work closely together to face global challenges, whether it be health, environmental, or economic crises. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Well, let's head to Nigeria now, where there have been some developments when it comes to cleaner energy. Husk Power Systems has launched its first 6 solar hybrid mini-grids. Now, this marks the first time the company has rolled out multiple mini-grids at one time under the Nigerian electrification project. Funded by the World Bank and the African Development Bank and implemented by Nigeria's Rural Electrification Agency, the initiative will provide clean, reliable and affordable electricity to about 5,000 households and 500 businesses in Doma and Lafia in the north of Nigeria. Well, let's discuss this project further with Husk Power Systems co-founder and CEO, Manoj Sina. Great to have you on the show with us today, sir. Now, this project will be a first for Nigeria in terms of launching multiple mini-grids at the same time. Can you explain to us the role a project like this plays in improving Africa's ability to achieve meaningful scale in its power sector and in solving its power issues, and of course in its clean energy goals as well?
Thank you, and thank you for having me on your show. So we just launched, like you said, a set of 6 mini-grids that are 100% renewable in the Nasarawa state of Nigeria. This really plays very well in the country of Nigeria because the national electrification program that the country has integrates the mini-grid as a part of its national electrification strategy. So it is not going to be a dozen or 2 dozen. We are going to do 1,000 mini-grids just in the country of Nigeria, which will become an extension, if you will, of the grid electrification. And we are doing that with 100% renewable source of energy, and thereby we are directly leapfrogging to 100% clean power rather than transition from, let's say, coal or oil or natural gas and then transition to a renewable source of energy. So I see mini-grid playing a humongous role in terms of catapulting the whole African continent, and we are only in Nigeria and Tanzania, but mostly in Nigeria, to a renewable power and provide 24/7 access of electricity to people in the rural parts of Nigeria in our case.
Now, of course, mini-grids, they have been hailed as a cost-effective solution for Africa. But stakeholders in the sector say the sector hasn't grown quicker because of 2 things, favorable regulation and, of course, finding the funding. So tell us how Husk Power was able to raise that funding and also work with Nigeria's government to achieve this project.
So those two reasons are definitely very important. There are two more pillars to the success of any mini grid. One is what you call LCOE, levelized cost of energy. And the fourth one is how do you really create a demand in the rural areas where nobody had electricity to begin with. So I would say there are four reasons why the mini grid has not truly scaled at, let's say, Pan-Africa level or global level. And Nigeria is very important because Nigeria adopted a mini grid policy back in early 2017, which makes it very clear for mini grid developers to come in, get licenses, and these are all one-stop shop kind of arrangements. So we don't have to wait for years to get licensed to do, let's say, the next 100 mini grids. That is playing a very important role for us, and that is one of the reasons why we entered Nigeria. Secondly, the funding. Of course, any investor who brings in capital, they want their due returns, right? And regulation forms the first basis of operating a business. So to make sure that the investors get their due returns, the two other factors that I talked about are critical. Levelized cost of energy that we are able to generate and distribute to people in the rural areas so that it is affordable for people who are using supply. And lastly, but very, very importantly, demand. The demand during daytime doesn't really exist because most people are very agricultural driven and there is no productive uses of energy. That's the programmatic approach that we at Husk brings to the society or the community, because our goal is not just to provide electricity, but to really catalyze the socioeconomic development by accelerating the productive uses of power. By that I mean, suppose you have carpenter shop that might be using manual process to build 5 furniture pieces. We transition them to sawmill, planing machine. All of a sudden that 5 furniture pieces goes to 50 furniture pieces. So that's the kind of intervention that we bring, which is very unique. And combination of these 4 things then makes mini grid very, very replicable and scalable. And that's what we bring, which is quite differentiated.
Right. Now, of course, Husk is planning to expand to a fleet of more than 100 mini grids in Nigeria within the next 2 years. Also, you're looking to expand these projects further in Africa. So as we discuss Africa's climate goals at this year's COP26, what are your plans to move forward with this in Africa? What role do you think they will play in helping Africa reach its climate goals? And certainly, do you think the regulatory and business environment in Africa is ready for such projects?
So one good thing about, if you look at the telecom sector, right, they transitioned. So most people in Africa, as I understand, they did not have to go through this landline connection. They directly catapulted or leapfrogged to telecom, which is a cell phone network. We see mini grid catalyzing that in that sense. So in Nigeria, like we have discussed, it is the regulation or favorable regulation that allows us to do this. We are looking at other countries like Liberia, Zambia, Uganda, and others where we can bring the same exact technology and with favorable regulation that has started happening, and the World Bank that is bringing some capital to these countries. We bring mini grids that is from day one, 100% renewable. So we become part of the energy transition from day one. It is not backward looking. And that's why I see this as a very catalytic work in terms of clean energy transition with 24/7 power access to people in Africa continent.
Well, we do have to leave it there, but many thanks, Mr. Sina, for joining us on the show today and for those great insights. That, of course, is Manoj Sina. He's the CEO and co-founder of Husk Power Systems. Well, let's now shift our focus to today's corporate headlines. Billionaire Amazon founder Jeff Bezos has announced a $2 billion pledge to support nature restoration during the United Nations COP26 climate summit in Glasgow. Now, Bezos said the Bezos Earth Fund, which he founded last year, will execute his $10 billion commitment to fund scientists, activists, and non-profit organizations in the fight against climate change. Meanwhile, Tesla's shares fell on Tuesday. That's after billionaire Elon Musk cast some doubt on Hertz Global Holdings' plan to buy about 100,000 electric vehicles for its rental car fleet. He downplayed the deal's potential in a tweet on Monday. Musk also said that because Tesla has demanded for more vehicles, or rather has demand for more vehicles than it can produce, the deal with Hertz has zero effect on our economics. And BP has reported a sharp rise in third quarter profit, lifted by stronger oil and natural gas prices as economies recover from the coronavirus pandemic. BP's underlying replacement cost profit reached $3.32 billion in the third quarter, exceeding analysts' expectations for $3.06 billion. That compares with $2.8 billion in profit in the second quarter and $86 million a year earlier when demand and prices collapsed due to the pandemic. And Massmart has revealed that the replacement cost for property and stock damages at its South African operations cost the company just over $160 million. This was a result of the civil unrest in July. Now, the retail and wholesale group is in the midst of a turnaround strategy to stem losses of the 43 affected stores. 25 have resumed trading by the end of September, 9 will open by the end of December, and the rest in 2022. And that's a look at our corporate headlines. Well, we are heading into a short break now, still coming up on the show. We look at how Nigerians are adapting to their digital currency just over a week after it was launched. And Tunisia assembles its first King Long bus in a partnership with the company's Chinese parent.
The world economy as we know it is about to change. Global business reports highlight emerging markets, developing countries, and dynamic sectors worldwide. We feature top analysts and newsmakers to provide perspectives on every facet of business. From an on-the-ground perspective, we provide you with balanced and objective assessments. Fast, sharp, and insightful. Global business, only on CGTN.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Welcome back. Well, let's head to Nigeria now. The country recently launched Africa's first digital currency. It is legal tender and the direct liability of the central bank. Well, CGTN's Kelechi Mekalam hit the streets of Abuja to get some reaction on how citizens are receiving and investing in the e-Naira.
The launch of Nigeria's digital currency is seen as a major milestone for the West African nation. Its central bank was averse to cryptocurrency, banning all banks from making such transactions, only to make a U-turn 8 months down the line. But how much traction is the e-Naira gaining so far? Earlier, we asked a few residents if they're keen on investing or transacting through this means. Here's what they had to say.
If there are no charges, I think e-Naira is good to go. But if that charges still remain, e-Naira is not good to go. Let them leave us for who we are and let's move on.
There's a lot of things in Nigeria now, it's all about scamming. So now we would have to trust this thing enough to want to do it.
Well, actually, I own a Binance wallet. I would like to invest a little in it and see what I can get from it.
Analysts believe the e-Naira could be economically viable, but government would have to do so much more to get people on board.
Agreed, you say that this would improve cross-border transactions and all that. But how many Nigerians have those necessary gadgets and tools to enable them access and use this platform? And again, you know that there is always a potential of fraudsters getting into that field. And people are wary of what this will mean. Days after launching this, there we had a set of people had already put on a fake social media handle for eNaira. So that to a great extent, again, substantiate the fears of people.
Nigeria is one of a few countries in the world and first in Africa to launch its official digital currency. Cryptocurrency adoption is popular in Nigeria, especially among the youth population. According to 2020 data by trading giant Paxful, the West African nation ranked second place after the US in Bitcoin trade volumes. President Muhammadu Buhari says the eNaira could boost Nigeria's GDP by $29 billion over the next decade. Kelechi Amekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
Well, let's move on now. AfriLabs, in collaboration with African Business Angels Network, has officially launched Catalytic Africa, which is a co-matching fund which is designed for African startups at the AfriLabs annual gathering. This co-matching investment is designed to fund African startups with innovative digital solutions and measurable impact. Now, the platform will increase the investments made by angel investors in African startups, as well as present reliable ecosystem data and insights to impact reporting for all stakeholders. Well, let's take this apart further with Fadila Chumba. She's the Secretary General of the African Business Angels Network. Great to have you with us on the show today, Fadila. Now, of course, this platform is meant to bring together African startups as well as innovation hubs, angel investors and their networks. And its basic aim is to make the whole process of engaging, vetting and fundraising easier going forward. Can you explain to us how so?
Thank you very much for having me today. Essentially, AfriLab, which is the largest network of hubs in the continent, and ABAN, which is also the largest network of angel network and angel investors on the continent, have decided to come together to better create a bridge, right, as stakeholders that are very relevant within the African ecosystem. And essentially, what we have noticed over the past few years is that early stage investing has been one of the core, right? The core means through which we believe startup can actually obtain the necessary funding as well as capacity building skills in order for them to grow their businesses. And Catalytic Africa is pretty much the solution to bringing all these stakeholders that are very vital in making sure that the African startup ecosystem can actually grow and be more solid in delivering results that we always want to see.
Now, of course, the pilot phase launched in May this year. 6 months later, give us an update on the progress you've seen and the progress made in that area.
Well, we run the pilot with 2 different countries that has completely different legal framework, and which was Cameroon and Nigeria. And with these 2 countries, there were 3 stakeholders involved per country. In Cameroon, we had the Angel Network, we had the Innovation Hub, and we had the Startup. For Nigeria, we did the same, having the Angel Network, the Startup, and the Innovation Hub. And from this pilot, what we have noticed is that we're able to run the workflow and to also find new efficiencies, but most importantly, kind of cut down on all the obstacles that these startups, Innovation Hub, and Angel Network always find difficult in funding these early stage businesses. And as we grow, we know that this solution that we're putting on the table would really allow African startup, innovation hubs, angel investors, and angel network joining the platform to apply for matching fund, experiencing a very seamless, right, holistic, but also meaningful experience without the usual setback that comes with applying for fundings, especially at this early stage of the businesses.
Well, I am curious to know, what did this pilot phase reveal about Africa's startup ecosystems, their challenges, their strengths, in terms of data about the funding available for them?
I have to be quite clear with you. We're really talking about early stage investing in Africa, which has been, is a very new sector that, however, has been emerging and proving that the actors, especially the angel investors, are very essential in this whole ecosystem. And so far, we as ABAN, we can record at least thousands of dollars that have been invested by angel investors in startup. But through this test and pilot and the process, the workflows, and the engagement that we have had with multiple stakeholders, we actually realized that the gap is even more larger than we would have imagined. Listen, we're talking about 54 countries in Africa, and Catalytic Africa is actually there to serve the whole continent. And we might be talking about billions that will be financing those early stage businesses. So at that level, we know that through ABAN and Catalytic Africa, we'll be able to close that funding gap. And we're happy that we have been able to consolidate all our angel investors and angel network across the continent. But most importantly, we're also seeing the other link that is being covered by AfriLabs, which is in charge of making sure that the hubs do actually get the right capacity building that they need in order to further strengthen those early stage businesses that are emerging within the continent. And we see that with the work that we're doing with AfriLabs, we know that all the stakeholders involved, the innovation hubs, the angel investors, and the angel network, we will be able to close the funding gap, number one, and also the skill gap that are very important in building those startups from a very early stage to the growth stage, and of course, expansion across the continent and outside of the continent.
Well, Fadila, we'll certainly keep a close eye on your progress. Many thanks for joining us on today's show. Of course, that's Fadila Chumba. She's the Secretary General of African Business Angels Network. And on that note, let's take a short break now, but still to come on the show. We look at how African countries are dealing with their energy crisis. We'll look at Kenya. And how about a face-to-face meeting with your digital twin?
Change is on the horizon. Through the shifting of time, Africa's emerging tech landscape is creating new channels.
There's a hunger for local African content globally.
Shaped by innovation, carved out by a new generation of digital entrepreneurs, sculpted by a mobile revolution, and trickling down to the most remote corners of the continent. TechSpot is seeking out the new concepts in technology, disrupting Africa's traditional sectors.
You're watching breaking news on CGTN.
Welcome to the world today on CGTN.
Welcome back. Now, Process, South Africa's road and rail transport entity, is facing serious cash constraints. Close to 1,000 workers haven't been paid since September, and staff at Autopax, which is a subsidiary of Process that runs its bus lines across the country, is the most affected. Here's Sumitra Naidu reporting.
Employees at Autopax say they've reached their limit. Late salary payments have become a common occurrence at Process.
Autopax is a bus passenger company which is wholly owned by Process. And as you know, Process is a state-owned entity. So the situation that we have at the moment is that workers have not been paid their salaries. In the last couple of years, they have suffered delays in payments in their salaries. Lately, they've not been paid. They've only been paid half their salary for September and nothing for the month of October. And at the same time, the future of Autopax remains uncertain.
Autopax declared a temporary operations closure 2 weeks ago without informing the unions or the workers.
If you look, in total, it's expected to have about 470 total number of buses that are there, but now it's operating about less than 20 buses now, as I'm talking to you. That on its own will obviously result into a cash flow problem. In September is where this thing has become more intense, where workers were not paid their salaries. And we fought with the company. Ultimately, only 50% was paid.
Several South African state-owned entities are near collapse due to financial constraints. Staff took to the streets on Friday, demanding salaries and an explanation on the future of the company.
We have made it very clear in our memorandum that salaries must be paid and that must be resolved immediately. And they have until close of business today to respond in writing to the demands that we placed in our memorandum. So besides the demand that we made for salaries to be paid, we've also made demands, for example, for a totally new management team to be appointed at Autopax. Autopax has been running at a loss for many years.
There's still no clarity whether PRASA will pay on behalf of Autopax once more. Autopax and PRASA have yet to comment. Sumitra Nadu, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Meanwhile, in Tunisia, the first King Long bus fully assembled in the country has been launched. This project is all part of a partnership with the Chinese giant King Long, which is a leading bus manufacturer, sold both in China and worldwide.
Medicar's factory is located in the town of Akuda in the coastal city of Sousse in the North African country. The King Long bus is the result of a successful partnership between Tunisia and China in the industrial sector. Medicar's targets an annual production capacity of around 120 buses.
The integration rate is around 42% and it's set to rise. We are planning to increase the production capacity of the factory. We import the rolling frame with the wheels from China, then we build the bus body and the remaining components in this factory.
China's ambassador to Tunisia declared that the first fully assembled Chinese bus, King Long in Sousse, is a good example of the win-win cooperation between China and Tunisia.
I know so many buses in China. From the first sight, I realized that this is a good quality bus in terms of manufacturing. All the international, Chinese and Tunisian technical standards are respected. I think it's a good achievement. I congratulate Medica's group for its capacity in building such good quality buses. Congratulations.
The King Long bus will be used for tourism and intercity travel. Experts say it will improve public and private transport in Tunisia.
This bus seats 53 people, including the driver. It has the latest technical features and luxury accessories, as well as robustness and rigidity, allowing it to cover long distances. It's equipped with comfortable seats, Wi-Fi, cameras, and top security. The bus has a panoramic view and 900 cubic meters of storage capacity.
In 2019, Chinese car manufacturer Geely inaugurated its first assembly unit in Sousse in partnership with Medicars and Zweri Industrial and Economic Group. The assembly line for the new bus has created 320 direct and indirect jobs in Tunisia. Medicars aims to supply the Maghreb and African markets with this bus model in partnership with the Chinese giant King Long. Adnan Shawashi, CGTN, Tunis.
Now, fuel prices in Kenya have skyrocketed over the past 3 years, peaking in September this year to an all-time high. Public anger over the issue has led to a parliamentary investigation to determine why fuel prices are so high in the country. So what then is behind the rising fuel prices? Well, CGTN's Robert Nagila tells us more.
Definitely to cover us. I am very frustrated because my business relies on fuel. More so with fuel.
Uber driver Lewis Kimani's frustrations are shared by most Kenyans. Rising fuel costs have cut into his profits and increased the cost of living.
I used to save 2,000 shillings, but now it is half of that 2,000 shillings.
In September, the cost of fuel had risen to its highest in a decade, with a litre of petrol selling at $1.34. It's now down to $1.29.
The consumer is actually being punished.
Sylvester Makarka, an energy expert, says part of the problem is down to the numerous taxes charged on fuel.
There are so many taxes that account for almost close to 46% of the fuel prices.
As a result, in parts of the country, consumers pay 3 times the cost of London fuel. The net effect was an increase in the inflation rate driven by a spike in commodity prices. Following a public outcry, the matter came before Parliament.
Prices have suddenly shot up means it's not about the law. It's some policy decision that must be examined and reversed.
The way they increase the prices, even by now, they can move on their own motion and reduce them accordingly.
Ironically, experts say the lawmakers are also at fault. When global oil prices plummeted below zero at the height of the pandemic, the government introduced a stabilization fund through Parliament to create stability once the volatility in the markets had passed.
Kenyan Parliament did not pass a regulation on how to pass this stabilizing subsidy to the consumer price.
Lawmakers are now considering tax cuts to ease fuel prices. But in the meantime, Kenyans will have to bear pain at the pump as a solution is sought. Robert Nagela, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
Now, the global shift to electric vehicles is well underway. Global leaders are now calling for an end to gasoline vehicles by the year 2040. But how prepared is Africa for the shift? Well, CGTN's Penina Karibe brings us the following story.
One of Nupia taxi company cars being charged for the next trip. There are 60 of such cars in Nairobi right now. This is the first taxi company to venture into this model. Chief Executive Juha Suhonen is very proud of his decision.
We are installing more charging stations and we are importing more cars.
They started with 3 vehicles and only 2 charging stations in late 2018. Today, the company's fleet has grown.
We are importing more cars, and actually today we have already imported more than 60 cars, and we are growing.
But it has not been without its challenges.
We were kind of expecting that the government will do something about the taxes and duties on these cars like some other African countries have already done. But unfortunately, we haven't seen that, so that has slowed down us a bit. And when you add on top of that COVID has made it a bit more expensive to import these cars when it comes to transportation cost and all this. So it practically means that the price of these cars has increased. And of course, that has slowed us a bit down. But nevertheless, we have the investment money and we are growing.
Some of those African countries he's referring to include Rwanda, which this year zero-rated importation of electric and hybrid vehicles and electric charging station equipment.
As an operator of electric vehicles, what are some of the incentives you would love to have from government to make it easy for you to operate?
Well, I would like to see that similar terms that were given to, for example, to players who imported solar panels to Kenya some time back. So meaning that when we are building out this charging network, which is good for the country and the people, maybe there could be something that could be done for the duties and taxes on those devices. And same what comes to the duties of these cars, since we're not consuming any gasoline, which is benefiting the people and the country.
The global shift to electronic vehicles has begun, with most world leaders suggesting traditional gasoline cars should be phased out by the year 2040. In fact, the new wave of battery electric vehicles and plug-in hybrid electric vehicles is slowly transforming the automobile industry. So how prepared is Africa for this shift? Let's find out. If you had $20,000 to buy a car, what kind of car would you go for? Electric vehicle or a petrol vehicle?
Electric vehicle.
Why?
Basically, because the fuel vehicle, there are a lot of variances in prices. Sometimes you're not sure whether at some point the prices will go up.
I would prefer electric, but there are challenges before I make the decision, because now I'll need to find out how to go about charging the car and actually upkeep and maintenance of the car. Yeah, because now that's a big issue. I don't think Africa has fully embraced the electronic car industry as yet. But I thought I saw a Tesla the other day, so I don't know.
I'll still go for petrol for now.
Why?
Because they're cheaper, reliable. Teslas in the US, at least they are a bit cheaper, and they are made for their roads. Including the softwares, nanini. In Kenya, we don't have the infrastructure, first of all.
But for the drivers of these electric cars, the benefits are innumerable both to them and the customers.
The first reason is that these cars are friendly to the environment. The second is that the car is very quiet, so the customer enjoys a peaceful ride. And third, our prices are cheaper compared to the gasoline cars, since we don't incur expenses of fuel and frequent servicing at the mechanic like the gasoline vehicles.
The shift may still be some time away from being fully implemented in Kenya, but the expectation for the government to hasten is evident. Penina Karibe, CGTN in Nairobi, Kenya.
Now, earlier this week, China applied to join the Digital Economy Partnership Agreement that originally started between Chile, New Zealand and Singapore. Now, Chinese Foreign Ministry, the Chinese Foreign Ministry says that the move shows China's determination in opening up.
The decision to join the Digital Economy Partnership Agreement shows how determined China is on opening up, as well as on improving itself and catching up to international standards. China has always been a firm supporter for multilateralism, regional cooperation, and free trade. The 4th China International Import Expo will open in Shanghai in a few days. And this time, we are hosting nearly 3,000 companies from 127 countries and regions. China will keep promoting multilateral trade with real actions.
Meanwhile, this year's China International Import Expo is kicking off on a Friday. The CIIE is considered a way for international companies to tap into the Chinese market. Well, at last year's fair, pharmaceutical giant AstraZeneca announced its expansion across China, and CGTN's Nicole Ng visited their new Chengdu office and had this report.
It's only become a household name since the start of the pandemic, but AstraZeneca has been in China for nearly 3 decades. In 2020, though, a major announcement: 5 new regional hubs for the company outside of its Shanghai headquarters.
It's not going to be a new office, but a new research center, new factory, new talent center.
Roger Liu says it came after years of planning and networking and attending the CIIE.
We received an overwhelming response. Lots of visitors, partners found us, they talked to us, including the Chengdu Sichuan government.
The Chengdu office provides an opportunity for the UK-based multinational to work closer with local companies, tap into talent and boost the size of the overall market. That market in China is expected to grow over 4% to more than $170 billion by 2024.
For AstraZeneca, it makes business sense to expand and seek out opportunities in China's southwest. But for the government, it's also a chance to tap into the company's expertise and boost the local economy.
Li Wei is part of the team tasked with attracting investment to the area.
We've made full use of the CIIE in recent years to carry out investment and promotional activities. AstraZeneca is a good example. It signed a strategic cooperation agreement with the Chengdu High-Tech Zone at last year's expo.
The city is already a hub for medical research, home to many labs, universities and research institutes. The government hopes to leverage this to make it an attractive place for investment.
The next step is continuing to make full use of Sichuan's advantages in the field of medicine and health, promote an international business environment with preferential policies for innovation and bringing in talent and capital.
Since opening its West China branch, AstraZeneca has helped a local company register an online hospital. It's also worked with traditional medicine makers to modernize business. Both the company and local government see the collaboration as a win-win situation and look to another CIIE for other opportunities. Nicole Ng, CGTN.
Now, as a powerful promoter of the world's multilateral trading system, China has been continuously expanding its opening up and strengthening economic and trade cooperation. This is with the aim of achieving a win-win situation for the common growth of the Chinese economy and, of course, the world economy as well. Let's hear from a Ugandan minister on the CIIE now.
And we think that there's a lot that we can do with China in terms of exports, export of fish, export of our fruits, but also inviting the Chinese people who have invested a lot in this country. And if you look at the structure of the industries that we have here in Uganda, the big portion of it is by the Chinese business people. So in the future, we think that we should continue with this Expo business forum to be able to exchange information, also use them as a platform to showcase for what we have as a country and attract foreign direct investments into our country.
Now, what is your take on having someone or something mirror at your every movement? Well, in a St. Petersburg art exhibition, a face-to-face meeting with your digital twin is now possible with the help of real-time technology.
As soon as visitors walk into this exhibit, they find out about the existence of their twin, a digital one. Thanks to real-time technology, the installations at this digital twins exhibit duplicate visitors' silhouettes and movements in space. Dozens of sensors continuously scan the surrounding space, capturing the movements, even gestures of the public.
We tried to blur the line between art and technology. Many people took part in this project, and we had a goal to create digital twins and to place a person into the digital world reality.
What visitors may not realize is the artworks can see them. With a wave of their hand, visitors can send colorful waves along the walls of the gallery or launch a whirlwind of digital cubes. For organizers, this exhibit is just a start.
Digital art already exists in Russia with the specific biennial as part of an exposition of existing museums and galleries. However, we decided to make it systematically. We decided first to demonstrate achievements of the global media art, and we'll show a famous exhibition of a known artist in December. And secondly, we decided to provide support to beginners. We will have an open competition, an open call from next year for junior graphic designers and media artists.
The exhibit is accompanied by 3 installations from the permanent exhibition, including an artwork called Kaleidoscope, which emulates the illuminated fountains of the Grand Palace of Peterhof in St. Petersburg. It responds to visitor steps. The free exhibit runs until 30 November. Ding Xue, CGTN.
Well, let's shift focus now to commodity markets today. Oil prices rising towards $85 a barrel, not far from a multi-year high. They were supported by signs that supply from OPEC and other producers is falling short as we see demand recovering from the worst of the pandemic. Meanwhile, gold prices eased today. They were hurt by an uptick in the dollar as investors await a policy meeting of the U.S. Central Bank for clues on how it will fight growing inflationary pressures and worries over weaker economic growth. Now, analysts expect gold to remain under pressure in an environment of central bank tightening. Let's take a short break now, still coming up on the show. A group of women help young girls in Kampala's informal settlements make their own reusable sanitary towels.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis, Cairo,
Syria,
Juba,
Johannesburg,
Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Now, in Uganda, a group of women are empowering young girls in Kampala slums with skills on how to make reusable sanitary pads. The UN Children's Fund says that helping girls manage their menstrual hygiene is one of the ways of keeping them in school, since many of these girls skip school every month due to their menstrual cycles. Here's Isabel Nakiria reporting on that story.
Learning how to make reusable sanitary pads has been life-changing for Hafswa Akelo. Unable to afford the cost of disposable pads before was stressful.
Sometimes I fold face towels and use them, but you can't stand it for even 4 hours. It burns and you can get heat rashes.
Hafswa lives with her single mother in Kamocha, one of the biggest slums in Kampala. Most of the families here can barely afford food, let alone sanitary products.
The biggest problem for girls in this slum is getting pads. They even ask people whom they shouldn't be asking. You find a young girl with a man friend because she needs him to give her money for buying pads, which should not be the case.
Hafsa says she would cut corners to ensure she has enough.
When Mom gives me money to go buy food, I save some and use that to buy pads at the end of the month.
Now a group of women is teaching young girls in the slum how to manage menstrual hygiene and save money by using reusable pads. About 50 girls in the slum have been able to gain skills in making reusable pads. Some are school dropouts and are hoping to use these skills in opening up their own tailoring businesses in future. Fine fabric is cut in 2 pieces and the girls stitch them together for use. The rest is sold cheaply to communities in the slum.
They start with their parents. Every week they bring 2,000 shillings. So when we gather that money, at least by 2 weeks we can get material. We can go to a window, buy those cheap things where we can get material. Even the customers, when they buy the completed ones, you can gather the money, give these ones.
Hafswa and dozens of other girls are now able to make their own reusable pads, which can last for more than 2 years if kept clean. The tailoring class is growing and more girls are showing interest in learning these skills. But there are millions of others who continue to miss school every month because they have nothing to use. Isabel Nakiria, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
And before we leave you today, a quick look at Africa's currencies. South Africa's rand joining other emerging market peers in moving higher against the dollar, putting it on course to end a 5-day losing streak. That's despite some unease about the result of a municipal election vote that could dampen government reforms. Now, the currency rose about 0.3%, retreating from 8-month lows. And that's it for this edition of Global Business Africa. Remember, you can send your feedback to the contacts on your screen. You can also follow us on our various digital media platforms. From me, Uche Okoronkwo, and the rest of the team, thanks for watching.